Jamie Dimon walks by our table. 10 minutes later, he walks back and I stop him. And I would eat lunch at home and I would watch Entourage. Got me so pumped up. And we sat on the floor and next to us was Jeremy Piven.
Office sitcom type of like reenactment. It was hilarious.
Gary was the one that really got us on this track to create a social presence. I gotta go to this meeting. This guy from Rick Gulliver's here. He goes, do you know who Rick Gulliver is? He's the founder of Hub. And I go, whoa, he wants you to meet him on his boat in the Ocean Reef. But he looks at me and he goes, I shared a bedroom with my grandmother until I was 18 years old. And if you don't take this deal, I'm gonna fight you right now on the stop. I watch people get into business two different ways it doesn't work.
Doug, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
So when I was reading into the whole story, and obviously we've known each other for a while now, I see a picture of you and Jamie Dimon. Talk to me about what happened. Did you run into him?
Yeah. So that was an interesting evening. So Jamie, obviously, CEO of JP Morgan, and somebody, as I was growing my personal business, I kind of looked to for inspiration in the way that he ran his business, despite the fact that I had never met him before. Just the way he treated his employees and the way that he structured kind of their day-to-day life. And in April of 2022, my partners and I sold our business, and it was a very special day in our professional careers. And I go out to dinner with my wife, and all of a sudden, Jamie Dimon walks by our table, literally the night that the day we closed in Key Biscayne. And I told my wife, that's Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan. And she goes, you got to stop him when he walks back. I go, with my luck, he's not going to walk back. He probably left the building. And sure enough, 10 minutes later, he walks back and I stop him. I'm nervous as hell. I'm more nervous about stopping him than I was closing my deal. And I said, hey, I just gotta let you know, I sold my business today.
Literally that
day. And I attribute a lot of the success we had to things that I stole from you.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's amazing. And he couldn't have been happier for me, despite the fact that he didn't know who I was. And to me, it was just like a accumulation of years and years worth of work and kind of like the stars aligning and just kind of a cherry on the top of an amazing
incredible
day.
And like for us, right? Like everybody gets on YouTube or sees an interview on Bloomberg. And for me, Jamie Dimon is one of those people that just like, this guy is like on it. Like he just looks honest, hardworking. Like
he's honest. He cuts to the chase. He was, as kind of younger entrepreneurs, and Jamie being older than us, somebody that kind of took a more relaxed environment within his offices. You started seeing people wear jeans at JP Morgan. And when I would have people kind of question us in our relaxed kind of attire in the office, I'd be like, JP Morgan's doing it.
Yeah.
I think we'll be okay.
Exactly right. So you sell your business. I want to go back to the beginning.
Sure.
So clearly insurance.
Yep.
You're giving everyone better insurance than they can find anywhere else.
Something like that. So,
how'd you start? When did you make the decision to start a business versus work in insurance? Were you working at it before?
I was. So my father was in the insurance business. So it was the one thing I told myself I'd never do. And when I graduated college, I played football in college. So I didn't really party or do much. I kind of was super focused on football. And so I had told my parents, I was set to go to law school. So I got into law school and I said, I want to take a year off and kind of be a student, be a kid, party. And my parents were cool with that. But my dad encouraged me. He's like, just don't sit on your ass all day.
Right.
Like, get your insurance license, like come to the office with me and check it out. And I did. And I realized there was like a major gap, generational gap with people that were working in the business. Yeah. Versus who was coming in the business. And there really weren't many young people in the business. And I started to do okay with it pretty quickly. And ironically enough, I'm at an industry convention and I run into a buddy of mine that I went to college with who had been playing in the Chicago White Sox.
Are you like 22, 28 at this age?
Like I'm 23 maybe. 22, 23, 2005. And I run into a buddy of mine at this insurance convention. I'm like, what the hell are you doing here? I thought you were playing with the White Sox. And he said, no, I did it for a few years and I retired. Wasn't for me, whatever. And now I'm working in the insurance business. And he goes, have you seen Lewis? And I go, Lewis that you played baseball with in college? Yeah. Well, he's downstairs. He sells insurance too. You guys work together? He goes, no, he works somewhere else. Long story short, within 90 days, we were all working with my father. Oh. And my dad had like a very specific niche. He insured thoroughbred racetracks across the country. But that was really what he did.
Yeah.
And so we worked with him for a few years, but then had kind of a bigger idea of what we wanted to do. And it wasn't just about how we wanted to sell insurance. It was how we wanted to build the company. And, you know, my father did well, but, you know, he's a baby boomer and they do things the way they want to do them. And we kind of had other ideas. So, in 2013, we started JAG, which was Jones, Alvarez, Gazitua, my two partners and I. And we immediately started doing the things that we wanted to do. And again, it was more employee centric. We said, if, you know, a lot of people put clients first.
Yeah.
We said, we're going to put our employees first.
Wow.
And if we put our employees first, they're going to treat our clients like gold. And I think that really hadn't been done in that space very much. And in a service oriented industry, you know, that's paramount.
Right.
And we just started getting clients and new clients. And even to my dad was like, were you sandbagging me? Like, what happened? Like, all of a sudden, you know, your business is blowing up and you guys are bringing in all these new, and I go, no, man, we're just doing these things that we wanted to kind of do all along. And now we have the freedom to do it. And it was a lot of fun. It was crazy. We started with a few people. When we sold the business, we were about just under 70 people, in a 9-year period. So it was a fast
decade run.
Yeah.
It was quick. So it's funny you say that. I was just looking at an interview of Steve Wynn, and he said the same exact thing. He was like, I focus on the experience comes from my employees.
Absolutely.
So I focus that my employees are happy, motivated, and that they want to be there, so that when people walk in, the feeling that they get in a hotel comes from the way that they're greeted, comes from the way that like people are, and you're bringing that to insurance. So think about going from like Las Vegas hotel resort to insurance.
Well, it's funny you say that. A lot of the stuff we ripped was from Disney, from Ritz-Carlton, and it wasn't, these weren't sales tactics. These were just creating an environment that people like to be in. And when people complain every morning when they wake up that they got to go to work, and we have a big staff of people that enjoy coming to work every day, and there's camaraderie, and it's more like a family. Because the truth is, you spend more time with these people than you do your own family. And so we would close the office early and do happy hours. We did a lot of fun stuff, a lot of employee engagement, and it certainly worked out, and it rubbed off, and it really helped, you know, our clients not just get better service, but also kind of see the human side of us as business owners and be like, man, obviously, if you treat your employees so well, you're going to treat me well too.
Yeah. I talk to like my friends a lot about it. It's like when I do the podcast, when I do the things on social media, it's like humanizing who I am.
Absolutely.
So I'm not just like some guy that sells buildings. Right. It's like, oh, Omar, I can trust that guy. And like you probably have run into the same. People that I've never met in my life are like my best friend. They're like, Omar, I've followed you for years. And I'm just like, wow, like great, amazing. It's really effective is I guess
absolutely.
the point.
And the more and more you do it, the more people get to know about it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they're calling you by your first name, asking you, how's your wife? How are the kids? How's the dog? Whatever. Like, those things happen.
And I'm like, great, how's your building?
Right.
You know? And they're like, oh yeah, we can talk about my building. And I'm like, I'm in third base already.
Those conversations happen way, way easier. I think we always took an approach of like, give, ask, right? What can I do for you? What can I do for you? And then, because people they're used to people being asked for something right off the bat.
Yeah.
And when you can take that human approach and just say, hey, look, it's great to meet you. We never met before. How can I help you?
Right.
What do you mean, how can I help you? Well, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
And then you do that enough times. And then frankly, typically you don't have to ask for anything. It just comes.
So walk me through insurance, right? How do you think about opening up different lines of business? Because you can do construction insurance, this insurance, that insurance. And we'll talk about multifamily insurance later on, but I'm more interested in like, how do you expand your business? What part of the insurance to get into?
Sure. So when we started JAG, we were purely what's called a property and casualty firm. So we just did property insurance and liability insurance. We didn't do life insurance. We didn't do employee benefits, 401k. We didn't do anything else. And as we started to grow, we thought about, hey, should we create additional revenue streams? But I think it's very important to know what you know and know what you don't know. Yeah. And I remember vividly watching a gentleman speak that started Domino's Pizza about how he started Domino's and how they started on a college campus and they would just make pies. And then all of a sudden people, you got to do chicken wings, you got to do salads, you got to do all this. And all of a sudden he's like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. And they were doing triple the revenue and their net was like almost nothing. And he's like, man, we're losing money in all these things that we're not really great at. Yeah. Let's go back to making medium-sized pizzas. And I tell that story a lot. And I told a lot over the years to my team as we kind of had ideas about starting different things. It was like, hey, let's stick to what we really, really know. And we kind of just fell into the real estate space. I think it was just from personal relationships or people that we knew. And it started from guys that owned a strip mall or, some single family homes. And it just, ballooned up to, larger and larger developers.
Yeah.
And a lot of those developers never built. So we were, frankly, 10 years ago, we weren't a construction firm either. It wasn't an aspect of our business. But as the market changes, and some of our developers that have been holding land for some time are like, you know what? We're going to build. Oh, now we're construction guys.
Right.
So that's kind of how we dovetailed into construction. So our biggest niches over the years have been real estate, construction, and heavy transportation, kind of all things, real estate related.
Yeah. And then as you're starting a business, walk me through, you now going from like the guy talking to the client and like working the deal to probably having more hiring and managerial and like, cause when I think about my business, right, I'm at a brokerage and it's like, they take care of everything.
Sure.
And I'm just talking to the client and it's great. And then if I think about a business, there's a million other things that you have to do.
So it's interesting you asked that question. The first, I think, kind of crossroad that we came to about needing help was not on the sales side. We realized, my partners and I, we realized that we were good salespeople. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens traditionally in insurance agencies is that the guy or girl who built the firm and it does all the sales gets to that point and they're like, you know what? I'm going to bring in other producers and I'm going to run the business. And then the business dies every time. Yeah. So we were like, all right, let's not do that. Let's bring in people to run the business like managerially, and we're just going to stay being producers. And that's what we did. So we brought in Melissa Rosado, who was from the banking world, not even from the insurance world, to be our first COO, and to kind of take off a lot of the HR and finance. And then she built an accounting team and just allowed us to, number one, sell insurance, and number two, still be that face for our employees. So we never went away. A lot of times, like, hey, now the boss sits behind the desk in that closed room. We never see him again. We always wanted to be front and center. Right.
That's incredible. And then that's something that you learned. Was that something that you like tactfully were like, this is what we're going to do? Or it's like, as you were building it, you're like, we need to get the COO. Like we need.
There's been a couple crossroads over the years where we realized like, hey, we've kind of got to the point where we don't know enough anymore to get the job done right. Yeah. And I think as the business grows and the expenses grow and the overhead grows, you got to be honest with yourself. Like, this is not my forte. Yeah. And you have the ability to bring those people in. Yeah. It was, we never took on any debt, which we were super proud of. So we never had any partners. We never had any investors, and we never took a single loan, for the exception of some credit card debt, but that's a whole other story. And
that was what Jimmy Dimon was for.
That was a whole different story. And so we always just bootstrapped everything. So if we wanted to bring in a 6-figure employee, it was coming out of our pockets. Yeah. And so, it was always a very intentional conversation about, hey, this is going to come out of our pockets. It's going to change our lifestyle for a certain period of time, but is it worth taking one step back to take 3 steps forward? Right. And that's where I could literally go off on my relationship with my partners and about.
I wanted to talk about that.
That's like,
do you guys complement each other? Are you guys all sort of like similar?
It's the weirdest dynamic in the world, and it's also the most beautiful thing. I can be honest, in the 15 years we've been working together, we've never had a serious argument where we didn't talk to each other for more than a day. We're all on the same path, and we all have the exact same goal, but we are so different, and we complement each other in that way. But allowing each other to screw up and not, kill each other over it, I think was the most important thing. I watch people get into business 2 different ways it doesn't work. Number one, by themselves. Mm-hmm. It does work sometimes, but it's extremely difficult. Yeah. And number 2, with the wrong partner, not being aligned. And I just happened to, be blessed to fall with these 2 guys that we raise our families the same. Like, we do everything outside of insurance almost exactly the same, but the way that we handle our day-to-day operations are completely different. And we became aware enough to the fact that we needed each other. Right. So I think the biggest light bulb that helped happen in our business was one day, and it's funny, we were at the bar at the Biltmore, and we had probably 1 too many tequilas, and there's a picture to prove it. And we said, we had all had our own books of business, and we were all running in our own lanes. And it was 1 too many times where one of us said to the other guy, hey, I'm going after this piece of business, or I lost out on this piece of business. And then the other guy says, well, I know that guy from college. And we just weren't communicating because we were all in our own lane. And we said that day at that bar, we're going to combine our books of business. We're all going to be
with your partners,
with my partners. Oh, and if you have a bad year, I'm going to pick you up. And if I have a bad year, you're going to pick me up. And it was probably the most selfless thing we ever did. And everybody told us we were crazy because this is what kills relationships. Right. And it just worked out amazingly. And we weren't all on the same page every year. Some years one was doing better than the other.
Yeah.
And then in the next year, the next person would fill in the gap, and it worked out. But it really is what took us to the next level, to be able to help each other, to communicate, and really tackle things. And even to this day, there are accounts that I'll come in, I'll meet somebody and I'll tell one of my partners, like, Fernie, this guy is like way more your speed than my speed. Yeah. I don't think he's gonna like me. All right. He's a baseball guy. He's gonna love you.
Yeah.
And there's nothing stopping us from helping each other. And I think taking that approach, taking the blinders off, and being, I don't want to call it greedy, but I think ultimately that's what it boils down to, is when people don't want to be team players, it's because they want it all for themselves. Yeah. And not only did I feel that way, but I was lucky enough to find two guys that felt exactly the same way.
Yeah. And you can be like long-term greedy in the sense of like, Absolutely. Hey, if we both combine, it'll be a net result for us both.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's so funny you say that, because I mean, in my brokeraging business too, it's the same exact thing. Yeah. It's like when two people want all the credit for everything and want this client, and like you end up having like internal friction for absolutely. The same client and stuff like that. Whereas, Mitch Simberg at Berkadia, he's got one of the most successful brokeraging teams, mortgage banking teams, I think in Florida. He's number one in Florida and like crushes it across the country. And Mitch, what I love and admire and respect the guy, but what I notice about him is two things. One, he is like a phenomenal leader. Like everyone loves him. And then two, it's the same thing. Everyone, his team, they all like hunt together, eat together, and they're not competing against each other.
For me, it's the removal of the ego, right? So ironically, a lot of the issues people have in business are not even money related. Yeah. They want the attention. They want the praise. They want the pat on the back. Yeah. And if you're okay with not getting that every time, you can be like far more successful. And that goes with the way that you treat people, the way that you are at home, the way you are in business. If you can remove your ego and not get hurt by what somebody says or the way something plays out, even if it's optically to the rest of the world, you're gonna be much more successful.
So how did you guys differ?
So it's funny. So I'm the asshole of the group, and Fernie is the nice guy, and then Lewis we call the politician. So Lewis could play both sides of it. So it's a lot of good cop, bad cop, right? And I think if each of us ran a business individually, it would have failed. Yeah, because
you're too much of an asshole.
Right. Well, I'm a pessimist at heart. I look at everything. I look at the glass half empty and I figure out how I can fill it again.
Sounds like a good insurance.
And it doesn't, right. But it doesn't, that's not always a good quality because you need positivity, right? Sure. So then Fernie's the opposite. Everything it's a bright and shiny day. We're going to get out there and we're going to kill it. And so sometimes our employees need to hear that, and sometimes our employees need to hear what's really going on.
Right, we got it.
And then Lewis is kind of in the middle to massage things either way. And I think that's kind of the most basic way to explain the dynamic between the three of us. And as far as how we sell, people in my business do one of two things. You're either like a people person, you build relationships, you take people out to drinks, you take them to parties or nightclubs or whatever, dinner, whatever it may be, we build relationships and then we do business like that. And then there's what I call tacticians, the guys that can take an insurance policy, break it down, and crush you at a boardroom table. Yeah. I feel even to this day, we're the only people in this business that do both. Okay. We'll take you to drink and we'll crush you on policy form. And for that, all three of us do that very well, and do it in a very similar way. But how we get to that closing table may be different, but we will all play the long game with everybody. We pick up clients today that we've been working on for 5-6 years. And I just don't think most people in sales in general are willing to wait that long.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So for me, when I started brokeraging and I was like 21, 22, it was the same exact thing. I was getting lunches and coffees and going out with guys that weren't necessarily, decision makers and weren't necessarily in my line of business. And fast forward 8 years, and they're now running the company or director of acquisitions. And I'm the guy. This happened. One of my best clients was a broker, a competitor at a different shop. We'd always trade notes. We'd always help each other out. Now he's on the principal side buying buildings from us. And I'm just like, and then he was like, dude, Omar, even when I was a competitor, we were like hanging out, shooting the shit. And like, if you think about it, it was like, I guess there was like a long-term plan part of that. Sure. But I'm just like, guys, let's just have fun and make money and help each other out.
So we did it very similarly. And I think we weren't just focused on making those relationships with people that were buying insurance. Like obviously one of the most important people in our supply chain are underwriters, right? Yeah. So we did the same thing with those guys. We built relationships with that. Once that generation turned and those guys became kind of our, colleagues, we built relationships with those people. The people that are putting the pen on the paper saying, this is how much this costs, or this is how we can get rid of this deductible. And even from the guys on your team that send us business, they're like, why did you guys get this done and somebody else didn't get it done? If you guys are in the same business, well, we don't know the same people, and the respect isn't given each way between every insurance agent in the world. One of the hardest parts about being in my business, and I'm sure it's similar to yours, there's levels to the way to how people sell insurance, right? You could buy auto insurance in a strip mall from a store that has a neon sign that says insurance, just like you can buy a building from a basic realtor, a normal realtor. And there's a time and a place for that strip mall insurance agency, and there's a time and a place for the realtor that sells the $200,000 unit. Yeah. But when you're selling big insurance policies or big buildings, there's levels to it, and breaking through and getting people to know that there is a difference, especially when that person's like the college roommate of your prospect. Their college roommate sells insurance. Well, he does sell insurance, but he doesn't really do it at the level that we do. So that going back to like how we get things done with sometimes other brokers don't, we just have more experience in doing certain things, but we've also built relationship with the underwriters that people haven't taken the time.
And you stick to your knitting as well, right? Yep. For me, with the social media branding, what ends up happening is like people are like, I've got this single family home lot in Fort Lauderdale. Yeah. And I'm like, that's amazing. I can refer you to someone else, not what I do.
Right. But you know what? The value you brought was to that person. You connected them with somebody, and then another broker somewhere else. You gave them a piece of business they never would have gotten. And I think that's your way of kind of giving back.
Yeah. And I'll give you another example. When I was younger in my career, like I only had that 1 hour lunch break to go and try to like meet with someone, because I was like underwriting and like doing a lot of the analytical work. Yeah. That was my 1 hour to meet with anybody. Yeah. And I would meet with like transaction lawyers, architects, whoever was like loosely related to real estate. And I got, I don't want to say reprimanded, but there was like, Omar, what are you doing? Like these people don't own real estate. And fast forward 5-10 years, that architect, all his clients build buildings, and they're like, oh, Omar's your guy. Yeah. And like just thinking about it from like, making relationships and adding value to whoever it is in your industry. It's crazy how it comes back.
Yeah. It's funny. It reminds me when I was first started in my career, and at lunchtime I had nothing to do, nor did I have enough money to go out and buy lunch. I would go back home and I would eat lunch at home, and I would watch Entourage on HBO.
Loved Entourage.
And it just got me like got me so pumped up. And, fast forward to like a year ago. So Hub, our company now sponsors Madison Square Garden. So we go to a lot of events there. And I took a good buddy of mine, Austin Hollow from Florida East Coast Realty, to a Heat game last year in Madison Square Garden. And we sat on the floor, and next to us was Jeremy Piven. And so at the end of the game, I got to stand up and tell the real Ari Gold, he's like, we were chopping up, and he's become a buddy. And hey, like early in my career, I would just go home and watch you yell at people on TV, and it got me fired up to go back out and work.
Dude, Ari Gold would get so canceled at our culture.
It would not work. It would not work today. But it honestly, I think it's one of the greatest characters ever.
So I'll never forget the first time that I saw something of you. Yeah. And I want to chat about this for a second, which was probably 4 or 5 years ago now. I was on Instagram, and I basically see like a office sitcom type of like reenactment. It was hilarious. And then I look and I'm like, who are these guys? And I look and it's Jag Insurance, and you guys do insurance, and you've got funny videos. Can you talk about that idea and how that helped and everything?
Sure. As our business started elevating, and we started kind of branching outside of South Florida, our biggest issue, the biggest roadblock we had was people would be like, I've never heard of you. Right. So it was just a brand recognition thing. So we engaged with, a gentleman in New York named Gary Vee, Gary Vaynerchuk, which a lot of people know who they are. And Gary was the one that really got us on this track to create a social presence. Yeah. And he told us it's got to be like 90 to 95% stuff that has nothing to do with insurance, but this is how you get the eyeballs. And then you spend your other 5 or 10% of your time educating people about what you do or why you're better than everybody else. Yeah. And we started making these funny videos, and believe it or not, for as much engagement we got on every video, we also got people, as we met them outside of South Florida, that said, we'd give them our business card and be like, Jag, I've heard of you guys. You guys made that funny video on LinkedIn, or you made that funny video on Instagram. And so for us, it was our only way, as kind of like the David versus Goliath scenario. It was our only way to compete against the juggernauts of the insurance world from a brand recognition standpoint. Cause a big issue as you kind of go upstream and write bigger accounts and you're dealing with C-suite employees. They're worried about their job. So if they hire Jack that nobody's ever heard of and we screw up, they're getting fired. But if you hire Hub or Aon or Willis or Marsh and they screw up, that CFO can throw his hands up in the air and say, these are one of the biggest companies in the world. Or whatever. So we that was how we kind of battled that, but it was mostly done through funny, stupid videos that and it worked.
Were all three of you on board with it? Were one of you really pushing it?
So my partner Louis Gazitua really pushed the funny videos, and a lot of the videos we had were just things he thought up at night and would just come and be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. And it got to the point where we had 4 full-time employees just shoot, edit, post all day long on all the platforms. And my partner Fernie had a podcast called The Transition, and so we were doing different things, but we were all on board. So Louis was kind of like the brains behind the funny videos, and he would just like tell us what to do. Like, hey, you're going to do this thing. You're going to look like an idiot, but people are going to love it. And we did it.
And you feel like for office morale, everything, it was all good.
Oh, the employees loved it. Now we would, every once in a while you'd have an employee be like, oh, I don't want to be on camera. And then at some point, that same employee would be like, how come I haven't been in a video? And it's like, all right, jump on in. Exactly. And it was great fun, man. Like shooting the videos was even more fun than watching them. And it was another kind of morale booster in the office to get people, get off your computer for a second, take a break. And we've always been big on kind of work-life balance. Like even in our office today, we have a gym, we have multiple kitchens, we have, a candy station, a cereal station. And it's really built because you're not built to work 24 hours a day and be
like
engaged.
A robot.
Correct. So like, let's be human for a second, take a break, get off the phone, go spin for 30 minutes, come back. And building a shower in an office that doesn't have a shower was difficult, but we have it done.
And now talk to me about the decision to sell your business. Was that always from the get-go? The opportunity came to you?
Never. And I think it's why it worked out for us. Even to this day, you come across 2 different types of people that build and people that chase. And we never chased because we never had an intention on selling our business. We were making a great living, completely independent. We had so much fun. And that's why we never pressured people to buy things from us because we were doing great. We're doing good. People that buy insurance from us now, they love us. They appreciate us. I had no reason to go chase things that weren't maybe good for me. So we were just building and building and building. Fun. And then, my partner Fernie was on a golf trip one day with a gentleman that works at Hub. And, we had been courted by really every major firm in the country and just we had shut it down at one point. In the beginning, we would take the dinners because they were nice, fun dinners, but then our employees would see us go to these dinners and they'd freak out. And so we made a commitment, to our employees that we weren't going to sell, for a period of time. And Fernie met this gentleman from Hub and they just kept pushing for a meeting. And we were familiar with the organization. And I think reluctantly, well, not reluctantly now, but at the time, accepted a meeting with this gentleman from their M&A team. And I remember sitting in my office and getting a call from our receptionist, hey, your 2:30 is here. And I go, well, who is it? He goes, oh, his name's Rick Gulliver. Who's Rick Gulliver? So I happened to be on the phone with another buddy of mine at the time, also in the insurance business. I got to go to this meeting. This guy from Rick Gulliver is here. He goes, do you know who Rick Gulliver is? He's the founder of Hub. And I go, whoa. So first meeting ever in our office, Rick Gulliver walks in. So you're talking to Rick founded Hub in Canada in 1999. And the company was then moved to Chicago, but founder shows up to our office.
Meeting number one.
And we hit it off with him and they made us an offer, which was amazing, but we really didn't want to lose our independence.
Right.
And we respectfully declined. And things went cold for a couple months. And then we get a call from a gentleman who's now my boss. and he goes, hey, Rick wants to talk to you again. He wants you to meet him on his boat in Ocean Reef. So if you'll meet him down, you could spend the night on the boat. We just want to talk. We have an idea for you guys. So as we're driving down there, both of my partners happen to be members at Ocean Reef. So we went and booked hotel rooms on the side because we were like, this meeting could go sideways. I'm not staying on this guy's boat. Let's book a hotel room. So we get on the boat and they present us with an opportunity to essentially run the region. So keep our independence, but also be a part of this massive company with resources, which was really what intrigued us, because we knew that we had hit a roadblock in the sense that, again, because we never took debt on, we never had money to play around with and bring resources in. Right. So we either needed to bring on debt or merge with somebody else. And this kind of happened at all the right time. It happened at the right time because Hub is such an entrepreneurial company that I think fits very well with the way that we view the world. They give us as much assistance as we want, but also stay out of the way as much as we desire. And it just has allowed us to create the resources to really go upstream with bigger developers and bigger companies and bring in the employee benefits experts that we never did on our own, or the 401k guys, or the surety departments. So now we have all these resources that we never had before. Right. And because of what has happened in the insurance industry in the last 3 years since we sold the business, I think couldn't have been better timing, because I think if we had stayed at JAG, there would have been a lot of those uncomfortable conversations with clients that said, hey, our premiums doubled since last year. Right. We need to go with a bigger company. Right. So timing was on our side.
So it was like, what, 2021?
So our engagement with Hub started in 2021 and we closed in April of 2022. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect timing.
Perfect.
When I talk to, I've talked to similar people that have like sold or monetized something like early 2022. And I'm just like, the world could not have been in a rosier environment.
It was both on like the private equity side. So we're a private equity.
Like the money, also the money to buy the business was super cheap, right? Like it worked for them too.
And now that I'm on the side of the table that's buying firms, you see that, it's not so easy anymore. The money's expensive. And it's a much different world, but
that's incredible. That's it. The timing is impeccable. The other thing, and you bring up a perfect point. While everyone's making money and everything's good, right? If somebody takes a flyer on JAG, it's okay because everything's good.
Sure.
But once things start getting dicey and people start losing money and there's like insurance companies to point at, it begs the question, like, why aren't we with, the Google, the whatever?
Where's your leverage, right? Leverage seems to be the word that's thrown around all the time. And now we do have the leverage.
You're like the top,
Yeah.
That is incredible. So were all three of your partners like always not on board and then on board, or was there like
It's funny. It was, we were all excited by the idea, right? But I think we all in different ways appreciated being completely independent. But I think when a deal comes across your table that makes so much sense, if you're with the right people, everybody's going to agree. But I do remember getting off that boat and my partner Fernie looking at Lewis and I and saying, Fernie is probably one of the greatest success stories of human beings that I've ever met. Wow. Comes from absolutely nothing, amazing family. But he looks at me and he goes, I shared a bedroom with my grandmother till I was 18 years old. And if you don't take this deal, I'm going to fight you right now on the stop. And I go, you don't have to fight me. You don't have to fight me. And, we're going to do the deal. But it was a funny moment looking back on it.
I would have kicked your ass.
And he's a big kid. I wasn't willing to roll the dice. It's a good thing we don't have to go there. Right. I'm completely on board with it. Wow. But, again, going back to the humanistic side of things, there's, business to me it's a game until a certain point, right? Yeah. And then it becomes real life. Yeah. And that was the moment where it became real life.
Yeah. You're like, okay. So now walk me through the transition Hub.
So it's been amazing. So we've just entered our third year. And from a leadership standpoint, Fernie and I share a president role. Okay. And Lewis is our chief sales officer. Okay. We've made 4 acquisitions in the last 2 years. Oh, so now, ironically, Hub calls their regional leaders hubs. I know it's a little cheesy, but it works. So any office in a geographical area will roll up to whatever is their nearest hub. So we're essentially control anything south of Orlando.
Got it.
Which is, there's probably 10 or 12 offices south of Orlando. We're at 18,000 employees in North America. Wow. So it's a big company, and there's 33 hubs in North America. So Fernie and I are one of 33 presidents. Really only a regional president and the CEO sit above us. So it gives us the ability to continue to run our business the way we ran it before, right? We still run the show. Yeah. There's no red tape. There's no, I don't have to go to a board and ask them for permission to do things. And for that, I think it's made kind of living this, if you want to call it corporate life, a lot easier for us, because the struggles that I've heard from other friends that have sold to more corporate companies or public companies, they're like, my life is completely different. I can't do anything.
There's shareholders, there's this, there's that.
Correct. Like, there's a reason, or an excuse for everything. And for us, it's really been business as usual. And I think for our clients, they've gotten the best of both worlds. They still get us.
And the resources.
And they get the resources.
That's incredible. Yep. So now talk to me about the transition that insurance has made over the last 3 years. I mean, from my perspective, right, when I'm selling a building for whatever, $100 million, the cap rate, let's say, is $5 million, right? Sorry, the cap rate is 5%. So that means that the profit, the NOI is $5 million. When insurance goes from $300K to $1 million, and that profit goes from 5 million to 4 million, it really changes the game. Yeah. So for me, I see it as it being an issue. And I mean, we love leaning on you guys to like figure out what's the best alternative, but like, what happened?
It's been a massive issue. And there were a multitude of things, right? Reinsurance, which is the insurance that the insurance companies buy, went through the roof, and that's a pass-through cost to the consumer. Natural disasters around the world. And then in Florida, we've had a lot of issues with attorneys and the way that they handle claims and charge back the insurance companies for their time, which is something that's been worked on as well. All of those issues I can't control. Right. So what can I control? And where was the value that we brought to our real estate clients was we looked at as the prices kept rising and rising and rising and say, okay, well, who's telling you how much to buy? Well, the lender is. Okay. I need to talk to the lender. Let's get the lender comfortable with saying, okay, you don't need to insure 100% of this building. Let me provide you some data, right? So we run reports that will cross-reference construction data with historical storm damage and give you what's called a probable maximum loss based on a certain size storm of how much you're going to lose from that hurricane. And we take that documentation to the lender and say, hey, instead of making them buy 100 million on this building you're referring to, they can get away with 25 million. And you as a lender are still protected. And let's have a conversation about how you get comfortable with this. Early on, this was a difficult conversation and didn't fly all the time. And I would say over the course of the last 2 years, we've seen every major lender get extremely comfortable with accepting less. Their collateral is protected. They're fiscally responsible to their investors. And we don't downplay that. We want to make sure that they're protected, but there's other ways to do it. And just saying insure everything doesn't mean that that's the right course of action.
Right. And then when you think about these lenders, basically what ends up happening, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's like there's a lot of lenders that want to lend money. And if you're not the one to like slightly lower these insurance requirements, then the next guy may and get that business.
So it used to be
like
that
competitive?
Way, but then we ran into the point where nobody would do it. Nobody would do the deal. Right. So like somebody has
when you say nobody would do the deal, like no lender would take those insurance.
Correct. And on the flip side, there was no insurance company or companies that was willing to do what the lender wanted. Yeah. So now nobody can buy, nobody can sell.
The same thing I'm talking about.
Correct. So now we've seen, even on the agency side, Fannie and Freddie being extremely flexible with their insurance requirements, allowing higher deductibles and less coverage. And again, still fully insuring the property for damage that could occur there. But that deals are getting closed again and prices are starting to normalize. I will tell you this, in December of last year, for whatever rhyme or reason, we started to see the market soften up a little bit.
When you say soften, it's like lower premiums?
Lower premiums.
Okay.
So the premiums got so high that we started seeing insurance companies come back into Florida opportunistically. People that hadn't done business here in a long time. And lo and behold, it created supply and demand again.
Right.
And we started seeing more companies back and people starting to drop their rates. So I've been giving my clients 10, 20, 30% discounts or premium reductions over what they paid last year. And we're starting to see things normalize quite a bit.
That's going to be the highlight reel right there. You're going to get flooded with calls and I'm going to be like, touch the dog. Yeah. No, well, so my understanding of it is insurance companies, right, left Florida because they're like natural disasters, fraud, like all these things.
All the above.
Premiums skyrocket.
Yep.
And now it's very profitable to be in that market if premiums have skyrocketed.
Yep.
Insurance companies come back into the market, prices come down again because of like the demand of these companies wanting to insure here.
Exactly.
It's pretty much.
Exactly. So, I have conversations with folks every day that aren't my clients that I tell them, hey, you should be getting a 20 or 25% rate decrease this year. Yeah. And they're like, well, my broker's not telling me that. Well, let's think about the way people are compensated in this business. You're compensated on commission. So if I lower your rate 20%, I lose 20% of my commission. Now, if you're a chaser,
yeah,
you're not going to tell your client that it's going down 20%. And then a guy like me is going to come in the back door and hit him with a discount.
Building a relationship.
Correct. So I can't tell you how often, even this week, that I'm hearing people say, what are you talking about discount? My broker didn't tell me I'm going to get a rate reduction.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking to the wrong broker.
Interesting. So has this been a stage, you know, what I see from my example as a broker is like with the turmoil in the market, it's an opportunity to like win clients that, you know, aren't as happy with.
It's a time to win clients, and it's a time to solidify your relationship with your current clients.
Correct.
And that's through transparency and coming early and often and saying, hey, I know you don't renew in 6 months, but get excited. Some good stuff is happening. I know you've been weathering a storm for the last 3 years, but finally I'm going to be able to help you. Yeah. And a lot of agents in my position, they're not creating that transparency. They're not telling them because they don't want to give up the commission. Yeah. But that's if I don't tell you early, somebody else is going to tell you. Yeah. But we built our entire business off transparency, honesty, and not playing in the gray area. And we lost business over the years. I mean, ironically, when people would come to us and say, man, how'd you guys grow the business so fast? I would laugh. I'd be like, could be 2 or 3 times as big if I was a little bit of a scumbag. But we never played that way. And the 3 of us were always on board with that. And we would let clients go if they asked us to bend the rules. Yeah. And that's why we never got sued. We never had issues. We never had E&Os or professional liability claims because we always did things above board. We did things outside the box, but always above board. Yeah.
I love the analogy or the example of like there are chasers and there are builders. That it's so funny. I'm gonna like, cause I see now that as you told me this, there's people I know that are chasing.
Go
like,
on Instagram for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Find some business guru on Instagram that tells you that you can be a millionaire tomorrow. Those are all chasers. Those are people, men and women that want to get rich quick. And the truth is, unless you hit the lotto, you can't get rich quick.
Such a hard.
It's going to take a long time. I'll give you insurance as an example. It's an amazing industry.
It's so good.
But you're not going to make shit for 5 years.
Yeah.
Minimum. Yeah. You're going to like live at home, have roommates. Yeah. It's not easy to get started. But if you're able to persevere through that tough time, it could be the most beautiful career ever. Yeah. But not many people are willing to stick it out.
Yeah. And be a builder in the insurance industry. Yeah. I have this theory, correct me if I'm wrong, that you know, what I do when I go and sell $100 million building or whatever, it attracts a lot of like the best talent because it's sexy. It's like all these things. Insurance is not as sexy and things like that. So like I have this theory that like if you're actually super talented, smart, charismatic, and you can like stick to the insurance business, you're like not competing with a JP Morgan investment banker.
You're not. And I think you described it well. It's probably the least sexy business in the world. And I think that's why we, again, going back to it, we tried not to sell insurance. Yeah. We tried to see what value we could bring to other people. Ironically, my circle of friends that all ended up in the real estate business and that were doing business with me, I would get calls from other people because they wanted to buy from my clients. Right. Hey, I know your client has this deal. It's not on the market. Can you introduce me to him? And the amount of times that I had clients buy and sell from each other without properties ever hitting the market, that was the value that I brought.
That's wild.
And so we would just get more people. Hey, by the way, thanks for helping me out. Can you handle my insurance? Absolutely. Yeah. I could probably count on one hand the amount of times in my entire career I've asked somebody for their policy. Yeah. It was more like, let's be friends. Let's build a relationship. And if you ever need me, you're going to ask me for it. And if I ever need to ask you for it, then we're probably not that good of friends.
100%. And something I'll never forget since the day I met you is like, I got your phone number and like every single time that I've texted you since the day I met you, you respond in 2 minutes.
I think it's wild. Look, I mean, it blows me away, how simple of a concept that is and how others don't grasp it. Again, I think it's going back to being human. Like I was 100% in your shoes not that long ago. I see the grind that you're on. I see the effort you're putting in. And I don't just think I'm helping you. I think I'm going to get something from you at some point. Like you're going to sell some monster building and it's going to come my way. Yeah. Do I need to ask you for it? No. Yeah. I think it's going to happen. And that's why you stay in communication with everybody that you can. Now, if you get a bad vibe from somebody or if you can tell they're in it for the wrong reasons, I might not text those people back right away. But the minute you meet good people, I've always told anybody that will listen to me, we live in Miami, right? Sunny place for shady people. Yeah. When I find good people, I hold on to them and I don't let go.
Yeah. That's good. Where were you born? What's your backstory?
I'm born and raised in Miami. I'm a third generation from Miami. Not many of us here.
What neighborhood?
I grew up in Miami Shores.
Third generation.
I grew up in Miami Shores. I went to high school in Hialeah. I went away for college for a little bit, ended up back here, met my wife, got married, live probably 30 blocks away from the house that I grew up in.
Is she also Miami?
She was born in Peru, but she moved here when she was 12, but been here her whole life. And now we have 3 little girls that go to the same school, the Cushman school that I went to when I was growing up. Awesome. And it's been a good ride.
Did you go to college away or?
So at a high school, I signed a football scholarship with the University of Arizona. So I played there my freshman year. And then I ended up leaving and transferring and finishing at FIU. So I played on the inaugural football team at FIU. And that's where I got to meet Fernie and Lewis. And actually, ironically, Lewis and I went to high school for a year with each other, but didn't really know each other.
Yeah.
But they both played on the baseball team at FIU. So we got to know each other in the weight room in college. And,
such a good time to bond and like know who and how someone is. And
just
stuff.
3 dumb jocks. Man.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's funny how often you can see people looking at you being like, how did you guys pull this off, you idiots?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not brain surgery.
Friends that's here like, hold on. I'm like, I still don't know what's going on.
A lot of times I don't either.
Just riding the wave. Speaking of Hialeah, I mean, blowing up.
Crazy.
It is wild.
We have quite a few developers that they've been active over the years, but really, really tuned it up now. Honestly, it's anywhere in South Florida that you can find land, from Homestead, Hialeah, even I have a client doing a project in Medley right now, which is such an industrial area, but doing a multifamily project. And I'm like, I think we need it. I think that South Florida needs, housing for our blue collar workers. And it's the biggest thing we're lacking at this moment. It's become unaffordable to live really near the epicenter of business. But I think there's our clients, and some people turn their nose down to real estate developers, like they're always in it for the money. It is a business, right? Yeah. But there are a handful of people out there doing the right thing right now that are picking up good lots. And hey, they could go Class A and sell condos, but they're not.
Yeah.
Right.
They're going density.
They're going density, and like let's get some more affordable units in here. So so the city can continue to grow.
Yeah. And if you look at like from a state political perspective, like everyone is actually tackling the affordability crisis head on. They're like, we need more units. We need to build. We need to give them incentives to build. And I'm like, guys, I understand it's an issue for sure. When something goes from here to here overnight, like there's going to be pressure. No doubt. Like we're in the direction of alleviating a lot of that pressure.
I agree. I think the city's done a great job, and
it doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't happen overnight.
I mean, to build a building takes 2 to 3 years, minimum, right? So it's happening. And I'll give you a good stat. Greystar is selling a deal in Hialeah right now. They just built. They're asking like $425,000 per unit for Hialeah, but I'll tell you why. They were leasing up the building. They were doing rents of like $2,500 a month, $2,500 a month, which is expensive. Yeah. And you're in Hialeah. Basically, there was so much demand for their building that now they're leasing at $2,900 a month, $3,000 a month in Hialeah.
I'm seeing similar things in Homestead.
Homestead.
And West Kendall. I mean, I'm seeing projects pop up in West Kendall. And I'm like, what's the street? And I'm like, I didn't even know the street existed. Like, it just keeps going west and west and west. And they're putting up good product, but it's become so expensive. You just got to find land somewhere and build somewhere. But look, I think also on the flip side, you have folks that are looking at cities like Homestead and saying, okay, well, how do we bring the life to Homestead? If we're going to create multifamily there for people to live, how do we create more gyms and malls cafes, and things like that? Correct. So
you're creating an environment for people.
There's opportunity everywhere.
Yeah. I heard this analogy of like Miami's doing the LAification, where it's like, there's just going to be different pockets of things because there's just so much traffic, where like Homestead's going to be its own thing. Brickell in Miami is going to be its own thing. Doral's going to be its own thing, and it's happening.
Oh yeah. Look at Doral.
Yeah, Doral is booming. That's where I grew up.
Yeah?
Yeah. Doral, I mean, from when I was there 20 years ago till today, I'm like, are you kidding? I'm like, it's a downtown. Doral, there's a Sweat 440, there's a Pura Vida, there's a DC Pie. I'm like, it's Brickell.
You don't need to leave.
I'm like, this is Brickell. It's wild. That's awesome. Something I want to touch on before we sort of like, put it to an end here is insurance.
Yep.
What I find really interesting about the business, and I'm curious how much you knew about this from your father or whatever it is, it's like, similar to the wealth management business, you like grow in like AUM and in size, and it's sort of like recurring revenues that just get bigger and bigger. It's sort of like a Warren Buffett's snowball.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, if you think about it, Warren Buffett's claim to fame and a lot of his success is Geico, which is an insurance company. And for him, it was investing the float, but like the business is great. So when you think about the insurance business, I guess walk me through how it is it from a business perspective.
It's funny. That is the most attractive thing from a finance perspective, especially to private equity firms, is the reoccurring revenue. Again, to three dumb jocks, that didn't like occur to us. We didn't realize that was the attractive thing to somebody to buy you is the reoccurring revenue. But, insurance is interesting because you're essentially putting a lot of small things into a bucket to create, I almost look at it like going to the beach and putting pieces of sand into a bucket. It's beautiful because you have reoccurring revenue, but it's also beautiful because once that bucket gets big enough, if you lose something, you don't necessarily realize it, right? So, it's why it's so difficult and time consuming to fill that bucket.
Right.
But it's also, once you get past that peak, obviously the reoccurring revenue, starting every year, knowing where you left off and that you're not starting back at zero, right? If you sell cars, every year you start at zero, or you sell buildings, you start at zero, unless you create relationships with people that continue to buy and sell. But essentially you're starting at zero. We never started at zero. We got a little bit bigger and, you had this kind of step up effect. That was amazing. But to me, it was all the most amazing part was the fact that if you built this, bucket of sand, that you weren't going to lose it overnight, and it allowed us to continue to build with a little bit less stress. And again, it's the beauty of the business, but it also what takes the most amount of time. So you can again, if you're chasing, you're not taking care of the people that are your clients now, and if you have an empty bucket at the beginning of the year, what's the purpose of getting into this business? So you have to take care of all these people while you continue to build with new things. And that is also what's attractive in the private equity world. Not just Geico. He also owns Berkshire Hathaway, which is one of the largest insurance companies in the world. A vast majority of his wealth has come from insurance. A lot of people, you may not realize, get their start in the insurance business. Jerry Jones, who owns the Cowboys, his first job was selling insurance.
Really?
Yeah. So there's a lot of folks who started in the insurance business, use it as a way to create income from themselves, have some form of windfall and move on to the next part of their career. I think for Fernie, Lewis and I, insurance is the only thing we know. So I don't think, I don't see what else could happen for us outside of that. But it was, obviously having the ability to start every year with a base, is the most attractive thing. But again, people come to us thinking that you start with that. You don't. You got to build it. It takes time.
Do you have any parting words for people that are maybe looking to get into insurance, looking to build a business?
Man, my partner Fernie tells everybody that insurance is the best kept secret in corporate America, and I think he's right. But it's like anything else, man. It's like what you do, really any occupation you have. If you don't have a passion for it and you don't build it slowly with the right intentions and treat people the right way, it's not going to happen for you. Now, if you're willing to take the time and invest in yourself and invest in the relationships that you have with people, you can do some great things. I know a lot of people turn their nose up to insurance because you're buying a promise, you're buying a piece of paper. But some of the proudest moments in the last 20 years I've been doing this is when I'm helping somebody on the worst day of their life. And at that point, they're never complaining about how much premium they paid or that they've never had a claim before in their life. On that day, they really need our help.
Thank God. And
so, helping people, having a great career financially, but also insurance is great because you can do whatever you want. If you want to be in sports, you can sell insurance in the sports field. If you want to be in medicine, you can sell insurance to hospitals. You want to be in real estate? Like, I love real estate. And I think the reason that most of my developers work with me is because I try not to think like an insurance agent. I try to think like a real estate owner. And I think about cap rates and I think about the way that it affects them. And I do what I can to help get them closed. It's because that is what I'm passionate about. So I'm allowed to be in your world, but also be in my world. And I think that's the versatility of insurance and being able to kind of have a niche in some other industry that you may get excited about. It's, that versatility is what makes it exciting.
And if you think about people that buy and sell real estate, the biggest expense line item is the taxes. And then after taxes,
it's right there.
It's insurance.
It's right there.
And it's just like, if you can save money on insurance, I think, you should pay attention to it.
Save money or create a structure that is more acceptable to, let's say, a lender or JD partner. You know, a lot of times I'm their insurance broker. Sometimes I'm their therapist.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm trying to say, hey, look, you brought an institutional partner in that has some insurance requirements that are archaic. Let me have a conversation with them. Oh, you can't talk to them. That's our equity partner. Just give me 5 minutes, second.
Yeah. And
we walk them off the ledge and we bring everybody back together. And that's where the therapy role comes in. But it's such a dynamic industry, and it's been a lot of fun for us. And, thankfully it's been fruitful in other ways as well. But I really enjoyed it.
I get this question a lot. I'm curious how you would answer it. How do you said passion, right? Find something that you're passionate about. How do you answer that question when people are like, I don't know what I'm passionate about?
You gotta just try different things, and find what really gets you fired up. Like, what makes you get up in the morning and get excited? Yeah. And, maybe it's fitness. Maybe you go to the gym, and maybe you're not built to be a trainer, but maybe at the gym you meet Omar, who gets you into real estate. So sometimes your end all be all passion is not going to click in your brain right away. I can tell you for a fact, as I said in the beginning, selling insurance was not on my list of things I wanted to do. I would just be like, when I was growing up, people would ask me what my dad did for a living. I'd be like, he sells insurance. Yeah. like it was just like,
now you're like this.
It was not the cool thing. So it was not something I wanted to do. And it was certainly not a passion of mine when I was playing football or when I was in college or anything. I think my passion is in winning. Yeah. And winning the right way and playing the game the right way. And insurance has given me and my partners a vehicle to battle it out and to play and be competitive every single day. And that's why even today if my phone rings at 7 a.m. in the morning, it's not a client. It's one of my business partners, and they're fired up about the day or something we got to do. And I can almost guarantee it, if my phone's sitting on the island and my wife tells me my phone's ringing, I'm like, is it Fernie or Lewis? It's one of them. Because 20 years later, we still have that passion to continue to build, even though we sold the business, to continue to build this hub that Hub has given us, and just go out and crush it.
Doug, I can't thank you enough for the time.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
100%.
It was fun.